Hello.
Hi there.
How are you?
I'm fine. How you doing?
This is Pauly.
This is Johnny.
And you're watching
The Canadian Bro Show.
Episode 8. Ain't that great?
And episode 8 is going to be our favorite comedies in film.
Right. Favorite comedies that we grew up with?
We both enjoy, and no particular order. And there's a good chance that we both have something similar.
There might be some overlap.
There might be, but I have
We shall
extra.
see.
I have extra ones just in case. Don't worry, I've got
Spoiler warning.
I've got my cheat sheet covered here. That way, because
Would you like to begin, dear brother?
I will allow Johnny Leister the opportunity to go first because
You pronounced my name right.
It's about
for
bloody
once.
time. I've only known him 52 years.
Well, you know, practice makes perfect.
certainly
Okay,
does.
I'm going to go with the Brady Bunch movie, which is not a movie. I mean, I was in my 20s or so when that movie came out. Directed by Betty Thomas from Hill Street Blues. And
By the way, I was in a Betty Thomas movie called I Spy
you mentioned that.
with Owen
Wow.
Wilson and Eddie Murphy. Yeah. My scene got cut in the opening.
Are you in the deleted scenes on the DVD?
God, I wish I was.
Yeah.
I've never bought it.
Maybe it's on YouTube somewhere.
Yeah, who
Okay.
knows? Who knows?
Well, I grew up watching the Brady Bunch and I loved it. Everybody else made fun of it because to me it presented a gold standard of what human beings could be. I just love that family. They were like the perfect family.
They really
So
were.
I went to this movie expecting a satire, and it's really not. It's really a tribute to the Brady Bunch, and it's a great premise. They're still stuck in the 70s. Have you seen it? They're stuck in the 70s.
I don't think I've found time to see that one.
But it's set in present day, which back then would have been the 1990s. And there's a wonderful scene towards the end where Marcia says to one of the kids, it's like, hey, we just marched to the beat of our own drummer.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's a great message. So that's my choice, the Brady Bunch movie. It's a lot of fun.
What a great sound. We marched to the beat, and plus they had a drummer in their family because I believe all of the family played a musical instrument of some kind. And a quick little side note on that movie that was filmed in the original house that was completely renovated, the Canadian brothers, Property Brothers, actually purchased that house after the movie.
Wow.
And I believe they still own it.
Okay.
And so a little side note, a little Canadian side note.
Does it have a toilet? Because
God,
they didn't have a toilet on the TV series, infamously.
Can you
never saw a
imagine?
toilet in the Brady bathroom.
And how many members of the family, the Brady family, are there?
6.
I thought
3
there
boys,
was more
3
than
girls.
that.
And then they added Oliver in the final season.
And the cats.
So
and
anyway,
the
that's my
dogs.
first choice,
Yeah.
the Brady Bunch movie.
Well,
It's a very
that was a
sweet film.
shock. I didn't expect
And
that
it has
at all.
a lot of laughs.
And this is what this is all about, laughs. I always found when John and I were discussing prior to the show, let's do comedy, and we were thinking maybe doing comedians. We were thinking about maybe best live
Future
comedians. Episode. Yeah, future episode for sure. But it's comedy and film really difficult to do, and thank goodness there's a lot of really good quality movies out there, and hopefully we hit a few of them. I'm going to go with back to 1984. I'm going to go a little all over the place. Back to 1984, and I'm going to go with Rob Reiner's directorial debut.
It's on my list.
And that's why I wanted to get it out first. This is Spinal Tap.
Great movie. Very funny.
Oh, extremely funny.
Mockumentary.
It's just really incredible. I've seen it so many times, and I enjoy it all the time. And This is Spinal Tap really goes up to 11. And of course, the whole thing is they had this speaker, and the speaker didn't go to 10. It went to 11.
They just wrote 11 on the speaker, assuming that would work.
Yeah, it was
because,
awesome.
Of course, science. Very funny movie.
Yeah,
it's made like a documentary.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's you'd almost believe that they were actually the band.
What was the name of the band? Spinal Tap. Obviously.
It was Spinal Tap, yeah. And Christopher Guest and Michael McKean were
Laverne and
aging
Shirley.
rockers in their American comeback tour. Love it. If you haven't seen it.
My favorite scene of that movie is when they're in the dressing room and they're trying to get to the stage and they actually get lost en route. So you see them wandering around like this boiler room, trying to find the stage. It's on my list.
Yeah. Another scene that reminds me, I remember, is they're going through an airport, and one of them has got a microphone wrapped in tinfoil and shoves it down in front of his pants, and the alarm goes off, and they thought it was really funny, right? But they almost got arrested.
I have to see that movie again.
Oh, it's great. So what would be, and by the way, these are not in any particular order if I haven't already said that. Yeah,
Sorry
so
about
Johnny,
that.
who do you got?
Psoriasis. My next choice is a pretty obscure movie, and I'll be very surprised if Paul has seen it. It's called Gregory's Girl, also from 1984. Do you know this movie?
Yes.
Directed by Bill Forsythe, and this movie has one of the simplest plots of all time. The whole story is this teenage dork that I could really relate to. He wants to get a date from the most beautiful girl in class. You know, Paul did not have this issue as a young man. Paul was very...
I was a dork, but a different type of dork.
The girls liked you. They did.
I was a sports geek, sports star.
He was very popular.
But I was a dorky dude.
I was on the other side of the spectrum, but that's fine.
Yeah, it's
so,
just...
that's the whole movie.
It's okay to be different.
You know, this dorky kid tries to work up the nerve to ask out the most beautiful girl in class who's a star soccer player. And the scene that I want to talk about just a little bit before we get to your next choice, Pauly, is right towards the end. It's kind of the climax of the film where they're sort of becoming friends, kind of. She kind of is like being nice to him, and she's walking away from him. And this is the moment where he wants to ask her out. And like the suspense, like Brian De Palma, John Carpenter's suspense music kicks in. And the audience, and I just remember like, ask her out, do it. And then he finally does. And it's just, it's wonderful. And she accepts. And I don't want to give away the rest of the story. There's a little bit of a twist at the end. But it's a very, very sweet, very cute, funny movie, very simple plot. Bill Forsythe was the writer and director. And that's my next choice, Gregory's Girl, from Scotland.
It's a good choice. So I saw it many, many, many years ago. I think it was a made-for-TV film. It was pretty good from what I remember, and that is definitely pulling it out of left field. Nice one, Johnny. I'm going to go back to the mid-'80s, and I remember this movie coming out and thinking, wow, what a great series of ideas to miss that first class in the morning, and perhaps even more than one class. I'm going to go with Ferris Bueller's Day Off, 1986.
Dan Quayle's favorite movie.
Matthew Broderick and a lot of his crew, director John Hughes.
Very
of course.
Prolific writer-director. The Breakfast Club, 16 Candles.
And of course he was part of many teen experience, generational type films. This one really captured the attention. It was #1 film all of that summer. And I saw it many, many, many times, and it became iconic.
It's not on my list, but I forgot about that one.
Yeah, well,
and
there's
of course,
so many.
the best scene for me is right at the very end, where after the credits have finished rolling, you see Ferris, his head sticks out, and he's like, why are you still here? The movie's over. Go home.
I forgot about that. It's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I really enjoyed that, and again, if you guys haven't seen that, I'd be really surprised, but definitely check it out. It's worth a viewing if you haven't seen it. I haven't seen the film in 20 years.
Very good choice. Very uplifting. And a great message about seizing the moment.
It was fun, and it was living in the moment. Absolutely.
Right, not procrastinating.
Yeah.
Living life.
Yeah, it was great.
Very, very fun film.
Nice one. Who do you got?
Okay, my next choice is a series of films, the Pink Panther movies from the 1970s, starting with A Shot in the Dark. And there were 4. There was the Pink Panther, The Return of the Pink Panther, and The Pink Panther Strikes Again. And the main character is one of the most legendary and most hilarious characters ever in the history of cinema. And my latest Lee Hacklin, which is called We Are the Champions, plug, and We is spelled O-U-I. I created a character based on Inspector Jacques Clouseau. These movies are absolutely gut-busting from beginning to end. Peter Sellers, one of the funniest men who ever lived, and all of these movies. I remember back in the day in the 70s, we would go to these movies. Our parents would take us, and we would talk about them and how funny they were. And so that's my next choice, the Pink Panther movies.
I wasn't going to go with the Pink Panther movies. I do have the Pink Panther, the first one, or the second one. I think it was the first one that I was talking about, and I'm a huge Peter Sellers fan.
Right.
He was absolutely brilliant. I was actually going to put Dr. Strangelove on this list.
That's another good choice.
It's a dark comedy, if you will.
Very dark.
But he plays 3 characters, and his acting is superb. I'm not going to tell you another film that I chose of him, but I did choose the original Pink Panther somewhere.
Oh, it's on your list?
Yeah, it's on the list. I've got 2 more from him, actually. But great movie, great series. Loved them. Funny. Absolutely loved them. Yeah. Especially the scene, I remember when he goes into his apartment and there's Kato.
Kato, his quote-unquote manservant. He's a politically incorrect phrase.
Right. It was kind of like a poor man's version of Bruce Lee.
It was the ongoing martial arts training that they had planned out in advance.
It was just such a fun scene. Yeah. Great movie, great series. great actor, tragically passed, but
Yeah.
life goes on.
And I love how well-meaning he is. Like, he's
Yeah.
such a good guy, but he's just clumsy as hell.
Yeah.
And thinks he's the smartest
He's
guy
a
in the room
buffoon.
when he's not.
He's a clown.
Yeah.
But he doesn't
know that
realize it.
But he doesn't realize that he's a clown,
Like,
which is what makes it funny.
like a lot of Parisian French, they think they're the bomb and are completely oblivious to the fact they might not be. Yeah. And Peter Sellers, he was in fact an actual bomb. He would explode in almost every movie he did. I mean, his talent alone.
And Herbert Lom was so awesome as Inspector Dreyfus,
incredible.
his boss.
Incredible.
They had a great chemistry.
Yeah, and zero patience and hot temper. It's a lot of fun. I'm going to go back to my British roots, and I fell in love with the Monty Python's Flying Circus that I used to watch on KTCS. Public channel in Seattle when I was growing up, on one of our 4 channels in our little black and white RCA that I had in the living room. And I used to watch all of their television shows, and I was like, these guys are nuts. And at the same time, once they got past the television show, they started to get into film. And their very first film,
This is on my list.
Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Yes.
1975.
The Holy Hand Grenade.
An absolute classic.
It is.
And if you hear the coconuts from a distance, you know that the horses and the soldiers are coming.
I think that was a last-minute addition to the script, because I think they were meant to have horses. They didn't have the budget for horses.
No.
So it's like, we'll just use coconuts. We'll just bang a couple of coconuts together, and it worked.
Absolutely brilliant. You know, and the siege of the castle.
Yeah.
Throw a cow! Throw a cow! And they literally threw a cow.
I love it when when John Cleese is running towards the castle, and the 2 guards are just standing. And they're like nothing's, and then you need like go back, and then finally John Cleese just like kills everybody in the castle and thinks he's rescuing the princess, but it's a complete misunderstanding.
And then
the king is like, "This is my special guest."
And there's another hilarious scene where he's got to cross this creek, and it's not a creek; it's supposed to be a bridge, but it's just like a creek. And there's this huge, soldier standing there with big knives, and he says, "I dare you to cross this creek. I will decapitate you if you think you can cross this creek." "Well, of course I'm going to cross this creek. How dare you?" Takes out his sword, and they start going at it. Right. And the other soldier, which is one of the Monty Python guys, just takes one swipe and chops the guy's whole arm off, and the blood's coming out. He's going, "Ew, is that all you have?"
It's very gory, but it's...
"Is that all you have?"
Yeah.
He goes, "That's just a
nick.
It's a mere flesh wound."
He
goes, "What are you talking about? I've severed your arm. You're bleeding. You're going to bleed." It's just, I loved graphic nature, but honest to God, one of the best films.
And by the time he's done, he's got no arms.
He stumps.
And he's like,
"Come here,
I'll
bite your balls out."
Well, family.
No, but I mean, that's what he said. It was in the movie.
That's on my list.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So,
and Life of Brian's another one.
What would
all those movies are
What
hilarious.
was your next one, Johnny?
My next one is a bit more recent, going back to the 1990s. Some people say this is the best Star Trek movie ever made, and I don't disagree with them. Galaxy Quest with Tim Allen, and it's a great premise. It's about a show called Galaxy Quest, which is basically Star Trek, and the actors are out of work and they're has-beens, and they're running the convention circuit and they're wearing the uniforms.
And there is a science fiction film of the same name that came out a few years ago.
Okay.
Anyways.
And so they're at a convention, and these aliens approach them. It's like, "Hey, can you come to our house?" But they don't understand that they're actual aliens, not understanding that the characters that Tim Allen and Sigourney Weaver and Alan Rickman are playing are fictional characters. They think they're historical documents.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a really underrated movie, and they kept talking about making a sequel, but unfortunately Alan Rickman passed away, and so that's my choice.
Was that The Fish Called Wanda?
That was with John Cleese too.
Yeah.
And Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah.
That's another good comedy.
God, I was almost going to add that.
Have you seen Galaxy Quest?
I have. Yeah,
it's very funny.
Yeah, it was okay. It's just, kind of low budget. But, I mean, big actors. I thought it was going to be more.
Yeah.
But I guess it was supposed to be sort of sarcastic and, a little bit irrelevant. I don't know.
And spoiler warning, the Trekkie nerds on Earth actually saved the day. The nerds who know absolutely everything about Galaxy Quest, they have the information that Tim Allen needs to defeat the villains. So I thought that was a nice touch.
Right. And Tim Allen, hey, from cocaine dealer in jail to multi-millionaire actor, award-winning actor.
You see, it's not too late for anybody.
Don't give up.
Don't
right,
give
Johnny?
up. Redemption.
Don't give up I'm not giving up. Johnny's not giving up.
We're
By the
just-
way,
we're
if you
just
know
getting-
any literary agents,
We're just getting warmed up.
we're looking for a professional, legitimate literary agent
Thank you, bro.
for Johnny Leister. Because this guy can write like a machine. Anyways, getting back to the next one is one of my favorite. I like to be a little bit diverse in my selections just to mix it up because there are quite a few good movies out there. This one really captured the imaginations. This film was done literally on a weekend on a budget of a few $1,000s, and it's called Friday.
Oh, I have not seen this movie.
1995. Iced-T.
Okay. Iced-T.
And I'm just going to say here, not much happens in the movie Friday. They basically just sit on their porch, drink beer, and smoke pot all day. And that's pretty much it. But it was an absolute... Gary Gray directs it and got iconic performances from Ice Cube and Chris Tucker, of course. The chemistry between these two is... They just bounce
Is
it
it
off.
shot like documentary style?
No, it's literally shot like at a house in the hood in Compton,
Right.
and they're sitting on the porches and
Just
they
hanging
drive their bikes and
Just riffing.
none of these guys got jobs,
Yeah.
right? And they're just baked all day and they drink beer, like 40s,
Okay.
and everybody loved it. It had good music,
They made a lot of
and the
sequels
movie
too, right?
was endlessly quotable. But the one would be, damn. And that would be Chris
was
with
the
his
catchphrase?
eyeball. Oh, yeah. Well, there was a whole bunch, but
There was a security guard I used to work with around that time. He used to say
Yeah.
it all the time. I guess he was a fan of that movie.
he was. And there were some great character actors and friends that were just phenomenal. They were off the cuff, improvising. And then after Friday came out, and it inspired two sequels, Next Friday and Friday After Next.
There wasn't a Saturday.
Not yet.
Not yet.
But knowing Ice Cube and that chemistry, don't be surprised if another Friday is coming down. I hope it is because
Everything comes back eventually.
yeah, especially when it's good and when you're making that kind of money on a low budget and you hit something like a home run,
Yeah.
it's huge. What do you
Good
got next,
choice.
Johnny?
I have not seen the movie.
Oh, you
my next
gotta
choice
check it out,
is,
dude.
Again, going back to the 80s, The Naked Gun, starring Leslie Nielsen, Zucker, and Abrams. Some of the funniest writers and directors. They made Airplane, and The Naked Gun is a spoof of... They're actually doing a remake with Liam Neeson. That could be interesting. But spoof of cop shows from
Leslie
the 1950s.
Nielsen would have been better because he's Canadian and hilariously funny.
And he's such a serious actor in his younger days.
Oh, yeah.
And then became a comedic actor after Airplane.
He used to carry a little fart machine on like Johnny Carson and all the David Letterman, and he would just say, "Oh, Dave, excuse me," and just drop a huge fake. But everybody laughed, and he was just one of these guys.
Yeah.
He
And
passed, but he was awesome.
He lived a very long life, and so there was Naked Gun 2.5, The Smell of Fear, and Naked Gun, The Final Insult, and all three movies are hilarious. Unfortunately, one of the actors, whose name I will not mention, who has passed away, which is, I don't want to be too negative, probably a good thing. His presence in these films is a bit of a distraction, but if you can get over that, these movies are just one sight gag after another. And the Zucker and Abrams, they just had an anything goes
Yeah.
attitude towards comedy. Nothing makes sense. It doesn't have to as long as it gets a laugh.
Very true.
It's an
And
excellent
I
choice.
almost had Airplane. I almost added it because I'm a huge Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, being a basketball fan, of course. And the person he's talking about is O.J. Simpson Juice.
Oh, you actually said the name.
Yeah, I
wasn't
had to.
going to.
I had to
I
because
didn't want to pay him that respect.
Well, I actually met O.J. in person.
He has a great OJ story. Do you
I
want to
do.
tell that story someday?
No,
Not
someday.
today? Okay.
But
It's wild.
It's kind of X-rated,
Disturbing.
and it's true. And I will tell it sometime
Mm.
because meeting him was pretty impressive. I grew up watching him in the old commercials where he'd run through
The
the
Hertz,
airport.
rent a
Hertz,
car.
And
He was a dynamic.
he was an incredible
personality, a
athlete.
Great athlete.
Incredible
and
athlete.
Unfortunately,
He just got
He
caught up in the
lost his,
wrong stuff.
yeah, but maybe we should get off that.
Yeah.
Too
So,
soon.
anyways, my next film is a legendary film. We all grew up watching it of our age group. I would have to go to National Lampoon's 1978 masterpiece, Animal House, with
Good
the
choice.
legend John Belushi. Just, fraternity brother at the riotous Delta House. And John Landis was the director. Landis did a lot of really
Very
good films.
prolific
Very
filmmaker.
prolific.
The Blues Brothers.
Blues Brothers as an example, and of course Belushi and Dan
Aykroyd
were they were partners in crime. And unfortunately, Belushi's not with us, but very talented and hilarious film.
He
Absolutely
burned brightly
hilarious.
for a short time, as some people do.
He did, and it happens. But I really enjoyed it. I haven't seen it in over probably 30 years, but I've seen it at least a dozen plus times, and it's classic. It just stands the test of time.
Yeah. John Vernon is so great as Dean.
He's such an...
John Vernon, another Canadian actor, trying to keep things Canadian, always played the authority figure.
Yes.
The man in charge.
Well, look at his face.
Yeah. He was like my dad.
Yeah.
He was almost like, he had that same kind of...
That same look?
Like the
always
stern.
stern.
And the intense
stern,
stare,
intensity.
The 1,000-yard stare.
Yeah. No thanks. I'd just drop him one shot.
There you go.
Anyways.
He's not lacking for self-confidence this time.
No. It's a fine line between confidence and arrogance, and my arrogant days are well long behind me. Thank God.
There you go.
My next is a different genre. It's a comedy. Tell me how you're going to make this genre into a comedy and do it as good as they did it. That's why it's one of my best favorite comedies, because it's almost impossible to do. But of course, when you're British, Shaun of the Dead.
Oh, yeah.
Just a brilliant movie.
High Fuzz is good too.
If you haven't seen it, it's British. Shaun is a 30-something loser.
Simon Pegg
with a dull, easy, and boring existence. When he's not working at the electronics store, like, one of those electronics stores you see in some dying mall.
Radio Shack.
Yeah, as an example. Yeah. He lives with his slovenly best friend, Ed, who's essentially just a loser. Just smokes pot all day, games, farts, eats, sleeps on the couch, doesn't have a life, doesn't have a job.
Have you seen Spaced, the TV series?
I did.
That's a very funny show.
It is. Yeah. It didn't make my list. I didn't think it was good. But they grow up in London, and all of a sudden they're in the middle of a zombie apocalypse, and everything unfolds.
When you know it.
Yeah, I mean, what are the odds, right? But it is hilarious. It's a 9 out of 10. Yeah. It is so good. And this Hollywood discovered Simon and his partner in crime, and they ended up doing a number of films.
Yeah, what's that one where they're...
The cop one?
They go bar hopping. They go from bar to bar, and it turns out that it's an alien invasion.
Oh,
the end of the world, something like that?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. That was good.
There's an amazing fight scene.
But if you haven't seen it, and you're scared of Jean, it is hilarious and really well done. Highly recommend it.
Cool. Okay, let's see. Let me have a look at my list for a second, because I'm sort of second-guessing myself a little bit here. I'm going to go with a movie that stars Pauly's all-time favorite actor, Tom Cruise. And you can see my nose growing like Pinocchio. No, he's not a Tom Cruise fan. I'm going to go with Jerry Maguire. Now, it's a comedy drama, but it has, for me, Cameron Crowe, a very prolific writer, director, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which would also be on my list. But one of my all-time favorite movie scenes is when Jerry, he's just been fired from a sports agency, and just Tom Cruise's physical motions, the way he moves, and the way he's so desperate to get everyone to come with him so that he can start his own company. And he's like, who's coming with me? Who's coming with me? Nobody's coming with me. And to me, it's one of the great comedic performances of all time. And I know we are very much split on this one, like Gene and Roger.
I mean,
thumbs up, thumbs down. But I love Jerry Maguire. It's a very sweet film.
Yeah, I saw it. I enjoyed it.
I
just find Tom Cruise insufferable. And although one of my favorite science fiction films,
he speaks very highly of you.
He speaks very highly of himself, from what I understand. The fact that he's with a cult is really creepy.
I never really that stuff.
Yeah, I just try to ignore it because cults are not good.
No.
Look at the
not a fan either.
Look at the 50 million that follow the orange bloated blob. That's a complete
the number
psychopath.
one Donald Trump fan.
Oh, just don't even mention his name. It's just it's just awful. But anyways, it was a good movie, and Cruise is a good actor. Let's face it. It is what it is. I'm not a big fan, but I've seen most of his movies.
You complete me.
Yeah, and that's when he's in his trailer looking in the mirror, butt naked. That's what Tom is.
The scene where he's fired by Bob Sugar,
other
agent,
he's just a narcissist.
It's hilarious. It's classic.
I'm going to go back to the late 60s on this one of the earliest comedies I've ever seen. And when I first saw it, I was pretty young. But I remember being cognizant and aware of this brilliant actor with incredible timing and charismatic. And after I saw the movie the first time, I was like, what did I just watch? And then I watched it again and again and again. And the more I watched it, the better the performance is. It is one of the most hilarious films. I mean, there were times where if I didn't have a bathroom close by, I could have had an accident. I was laughing so hard. I would have to go back to Peter Sellers in The Party.
Oh, I have not seen this movie.
Oh my God, Johnny.
No, sorry.
1968. It
Shame
is.
on me.
He plays Hurinde V. Bareshi.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah, no, well, that was hard for me to say because that was a terrible East Indian accent. But he plays this wannabe East Indian actor that is an extra in this film, and he goes to the party, which is a rap party. And essentially, it is, he completely destroys the entire party, accidentally, of course, systematically, and the whole movie just unfolds. It's hilarious. One of the funniest movies I've ever seen in
So
my
he
life.
does it unintentionally. He's clumsy.
You have to see it.
Inspector Clouseau?
You have to see it.
1960s, I want to say?
1968.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Elkie Summer?
Yes.
Okay.
Good job. Wow. Elkie Summer, who was the Swedish Playboy gal. And
Very easy on the eyes.
very, very beautiful lady. Was also in James Coburn in like Flint or Our Man Flint. One of those two, if not both. She was hot at that time.
We should do spy movies.
Well, we're going to. We love movies, so we're going
Like
to.
more obscure ones.
But if you haven't seen The Party, please do.
Okay.
Peter Sellers, brilliant.
Okay. Well, my next choice, I only have a couple more on my list, but I'm going to go with Back to the Future, 1984. Originally, Eric Stoltz was cast as Marty McFly, which is interesting. You can actually watch some of that footage online. And he was a great actor, but clearly Michael J. Fox was the better choice. And Canadian. Michael J. Fox was born in Burnaby, British Columbia, Canada. I mean, we're practically friends of his. And great premise. This kid goes back in time in a DeLorean, and he meets his teenage girl, and guess what? She's his future mom, and she develops a crush on him. Now, it sounds creepy, but it's actually a very sweet movie. And I also enjoyed the sequels very much. I think the third one is really underrated. But those sequels are missing Crispin Glover, and I feel that Crispin Glover is the real star of that movie. His performance as George McFly, I feel, is sublime, who is Michael J. Fox's father. And of course, they're both teenagers because Michael J. Fox says Marty McFly's gone back in time in this DeLorean. And they develop a nice kind of reverse friendship where Marty is actually the father figure to the guy who winds up becoming his dad.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good explanation.
It's a classic.
It is a classic, and I did watch it. I only watched the first one. I really didn't like the series.
Oh, really? You didn't
Yeah,
see
the first
parts
one was
2 or 3?
okay. It was just, there was a certain level of cheese. And once I got...
That was the 80s.
Yeah, and bad hair, suspect music, although I loved the music in the 80s myself.
Huey Lewis.
Well, I mean, look, in the 80s I was at Love Affair or Graceland and or the
I
Roxy.
never saw you there because I used to go to those clubs too.
Because I was on the speaker dancing crazy. Just trying to like move and groove. And
that's a good theme for a future episode.
Oh, yeah.
All the clubbing that we used to do back in the day.
Oh, boy, yeah. Well, I didn't know that you were a clubber.
I was.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I mean, that's a great choice and certainly a popular choice. Mine was the #1 film in the world when it came out. And because I'm a huge golf fan, now that I quit basketball, I golf now and occasionally play tennis, mostly ride bike and walk and so on. But golfing is my #1 sport that I still enjoy, that I'm able to still do. I would have to go with Caddyshack. Caddyshack is the best golf movie I've ever seen. Probably one of the best
There's been so many.
comedies I've ever seen.
Well, there's a Caddyshack and Billy Madison.
Oh, please don't say that that actor. He's
Not
just,
an M. Sally fan at all.
oh, just terrible. Terrible.
I haven't seen any of those movies, but I have seen Caddyshack, and it is a very funny film. Rodney Dangerfield.
Oh, Rodney's just incredible
Chase.
in it. Chevy Chase.
The guy from Mary Tyler Moore, Ted Knight.
And Michael O'Keefe is Danny Noonan. And it's the Bushwood Country Club. And it's one funny scene. It's really hilarious. Yeah. It's so well done. But that's that one. And what do you got next, Johnny?
Okay. I won't look at my phone. I'm going to go with Valley Girl from 1983. It's Nicolas Cage's first movie, and co-starring Deborah Foreman, who was a great actress. And she only made one other movie, My Chauffeur, with Sam Jones, who played Flash Gordon back in the day.
Right.
And Valley Girl is basically Romeo and Juliet. Nick Cage, I think he's 21 when he made this movie with a full head of hair. He plays this punk rocker, and he falls in love with this bitchin' Valley Girl.
Isn't it a Coppola film?
Coppola is Nicolas Cage's nephew,
Right,
if I'm
but
not mistaken.
I think
he changed his name
I
to
think
Cage
he
'cause
produced
didn't-
it.
He didn't want to trade off
Yeah.
on the quote-unquote brand name Coppola.
Yeah.
And Valley Girl has one of the greatest soundtracks of all time,
Yeah.
one great song after another.
Yeah.
And it's a very sweet, very simple love story. Again, it's basically Romeo and Juliet. You know,
Yeah.
she's the rich Valley Girl, he's the poor punk rocker. It's a total mismatch, but eventually love conquers all. And nothing original about it, but I've never been one for originality. I like a story that's emotional. And the movie has a lot of good laughs too. Have you seen Valley Girl?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and it was really well done.
Yeah.
And Cage was, electric, his performance. I mean, he's done hundreds and hundreds
So
of
charismatic.
movies.
He was going to be Superman at one point.
Oh, God.
They actually cast him
Here
in
we
the
go.
late 90s as
Johnny and Superman.
That would have been different.
So, Johnny, what are you going to be at Halloween this coming year? Superman? No way!
I keep saying that you and I should dress up as
Batman and Robin?
No, well,
You'd look good. You'd look good in Robin tights, my friend.
Thank you for that. See this? I'm going to turn the right side up. No, I'm going to go with Jake and Elwood Blues.
Okay.
We should do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, we can talk about it.
I'm Jake.
Yeah, of course. I would rather do like the guys.
Bob and Doug?
Well, I love Bob and Doug. I was going to go Canadian. I was going to go with the Trailer Park guys.
Okay.
And I could be. You could be the guy with the bottleneck glasses.
I have not seen that show.
You've never seen that?
No, I've never seen Trailer. I know everyone has like the
Holy
greatest Canadian comedy ever
It
made.
is really good.
never seen
It is really. It had a great run. So these two are going to go together because I've already brought up Monty Python, and I'm such a huge Monty Python fan. I had to bring up these two movies. I actually wanted to include a third. I'll just mention it. Probably the best, in my opinion, the best Monty Python film is even better than the first one, The Holy Grail, which I mentioned earlier. I would say the best Monty Python film is The Life of Brian. And I'll just give you a little synopsis. A young man, Brian, who was born one stable down the same night as Jesus. Can you imagine that? The same
Very
night?
controversial movie at the time, I remember.
It was.
Yeah.
Becomes intrigued by the young rebel Judith. To try to impress her, Brian joins the independence movement against the Romans. Not a good idea at that time. And the People's Front of Judea. Even worse.
Graham Chapman,
yeah. And he's passed, unfortunately, just after this film. He was the lead in this. He was brilliant in this. And an attempt to hide from the Romans, and the story unfolds. It is brilliant screenplay.
There's a scene where he's running from the Romans and he leaps off a building and the spaceship comes out of nowhere and rescues him, and there's like a space battle. There's a Monty Python,
It's just all over the place. But I mean,
Yeah.
for me, one of my lasting is one of the last scenes of the movie, and where Brian is having to carry his cross to be
a lot
crucified.
of people think that he's Jesus.
Right.
And he tells him, like, don't follow me, follow yourself.
So they're taking him to crucify him, and of course the thing is massive, and they're spearing him on the way, and people are spitting at him, and he gets up there, and there's two guys already there, and they put him in the middle.
Eric Idle.
Eric Idle is the one guy, and he's got like the huge metal pillars.
He's whistling cheerfully.
Well, he looks at me and goes, "Cheer up, Brian.
It's not the end of the world.
It's not the end of the world. Come on, Brian. Always look on the bright side of life."
And then the credits roll.
And Brian's like, "What the hell's going on?"
It's very dark and inspiring at the same time.
It's hilarious.
which is hard to pull
It's a mockery on religion,
Yeah.
basically. And it is
Well, I
fantastic.
saw it more as a mockery of people's attitudes towards
Yeah.
religion. It's much easier to think the way somebody else thinks versus having faith in what you think. And
Very
how you wanna
nicely
live
said,
your life.
Johnny. And I have to mention in the same breath that Monty Python's last film is called The Meaning of Life. And it's my favorite of all the Monty Python films.
Is that the one where the guy's eating and his stomach explodes?
That's one of the scenes. It's he looks like Hercule Poirot, except he's about 600 pounds. And John Cleese is the waiter, and he keeps on feeding this guy, and this guy's just a lush. He just eats like a machine.
Me before 2019.
Oh my God! He was bigger than Johnny, and Johnny was almost 300 pounds. This guy was 500
Not
pounds.
quite, but approaching.
So he finally comes up and he's eating everything, and they're eating everything. And so every time Cleese comes by to clear a plate, the guy looks over and he throws up on just off the side of the plate just to empty himself so he can refill. And then John sends over a lady, and she's
like
got a brush.
Niagara Falls puke.
She's got a brush, and the guy looks over and sees her, and he throws up on her. And it's crazy. And Cleese is trying to help and clean. He's throwing up everywhere. And then Cleese finally goes to the bill, and he goes, "Sir, would you like one final thin wafer?
What would you like for
mint?"
dessert?
And the guy swears at the waiter, and he goes, "I don't want to eat." "Oh, all right."
Is it Michael Palin?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. And so Michael Palin has it, and all of a sudden his stomach starts rumbling, and John Cleese goes, "Hide!"
I have seen this one
Hide!
clip. I've not seen the movie.
And
it's pretty gross.
It is really gross. The guy explodes in the restaurant. I mean, the whole movie is one scene after another. It's incredible.
Graphic, as I recall.
It is, but I mean, it's not. You want to see graphic? Go see Caligula. That's graphic. Go see a war movie like Saving Private Ryan or Dawn of the Dead, George Romero's first one, but the extended cut. That's almost 3 hours long. Oh, we got to do zombie movies. Yeah. So, anyways, those two go together because I'm a huge Monty Python fan. I've already said them. Okay. Johnny, how many more you got?
Okay, I have one more on my list. I don't know if you want to wrap this up pretty soon. I guess this will be my last one. Another National Lampoon movie, Vacation, with Chevy Chase.
Yeah.
And Christy Brinkley.
Nice.
And Beverly D'Angelo. Anthony Michael Hall.
Yes.
Who plays his son. And the premise is Chevy Chase is Clark Griswold. He wants to take his family to this Disneyland Avatar, which is Wally World, and it's basically everything.
Which is essentially Knott's Berry Farm.
Okay, that's right. And everything that can go wrong does go wrong along the way. And finally, spoiler warning, when he gets to the... I love his determination. He's just so determined. And you can see that he's kind of losing his mind along the way. And he's just struggling to keep a lid on his emotions.
Chevy is not actually acting at this point. This is just how he is.
And so he gets to the amusement park, and the late, great John Candy, Canadian, trying to keep things Canadian, plays the security guard, and he's like, I'm sorry, sir, Wally World is closed. Yeah. And then I don't want to spoil the rest of it, but I think it's one of the funniest movies
hilarious.
That I remember watching from 1984, I want to say.
Yeah. And
I think Carol Dramis was the director.
I actually served John Candy a couple of times at the Hotel Meridian in the Girard dining room.
Who haven't you served?
Almost everyone. And John Candy was about 6'4", 400 pounds. He was a big man, very friendly, jolly giant, but he was chain smoke, and so he had 4 packs of cigarettes, and he chain smoked for 3 hours during this, and it was just too much, man. That's why he didn't last. He was obese, he was huge and unhealthy.
And a smoker. I didn't realize he was a smoker too.
Just chain smoking.
But a great comedic
and a nice chap,
actor,
and Canadian.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is another classic with Steve Martin.
So we're getting up to almost 40 minutes. I want to try to keep it around 40 minutes. I think
that's my last one.
I'm going to go with one more.
Okay.
Because I love these guys. Probably these guys back in Vancouver in the mid to late 60s had a band.
And they tried real hard?
And they played at the Smiling Buddha on East Hastings way back in the day. And it was Cheech and Chong.
Oh.
And Cheech and Chong not only did writing and commercials, and they had a band, and they did theater, they did a lot of things. They also wrote a lot of movies, and their best movie, in my opinion, they've done 3 or 4, was Up in Smoke.
Haven't seen it.
Oh my God, it is incredible. So, an unemployed pot-smoking slacker, an amateur drummer, Anthony Stoner, which is Tommy Chong, Canadian.
Pretty on-the-nose name.
Ditches his strict parents and hits the road, eventually meeting a kindred spirit, Pedro de Bacaz, Cheech Martin. And Cheech and Chong were just so charismatic. They bounced off each other, and they were hapless. So while the drug-ingesting duo is soon arrested for possession of marijuana, the whole movie just goes from one scene to the next. It is hilarious. And this is way before. This is in the 60s and 70s. In the 80s, when pot was very much still illegal.
Right. It was more taboo.
It was much more taboo, and it wasn't just pot.
In Vancouver, it's pretty much like eating, sleeping, and drinking.
It's everywhere you go. Like the
I am not a pot
fireworks
smoker
were
myself,
last.
but it is legal.
Yeah, it's probably a good thing, Johnny. I can't imagine you.
Beer is enough for me.
Yeah, I think beer,
As far as vices go.
Yeah, and beer. I mean, the problem with beer is no problem with you. It's when you mix tequila and beer.
I have no problem with pot. I just don't like the smell of it.
Wow.
It just turns me off.
Anyways,
Don't call it skunk for no reason.
Yeah, my wife doesn't like the smell of it either, but it's everywhere. And the fireworks were last night, and you could smell it wafting all over the place. It was crazy. But listen, we just wanted to wrap this up today.
Okay.
This is going to be episode 8. And we want to thank you once again for
so much.
Finding 40 plus minutes out of your day to hang out with Pauly and Johnny. And all things Canadian.
I have a pun.
Oh,
before we go.
A pun.
All right, here we go. Get ready. Hold on to your seat. The atom is the least trustworthy superhero. He makes up everything. Thank you very much.
Oh, my goodness.
No?
Just absolutely brilliant. I just have to...
He's laughing on the inside.
Yeah, and just... can you tell? It's... Gotta keep working on those puns, Johnny. But we like the effort. We like your effort.
Love you.
Thank you for coming and
Thank
enjoying
you so much.
our
your friends.
episode on comedies, films that we love.
We want to hear about your favorite comedies.
Yeah, and so our next episode, Johnny, we're thinking of doing...
We're going to talk about our vision for what we want to see for ourselves.
And moving into the future.
In our lives.
Oh, interesting. Okay. And that'll be episode 9. But in the meantime, we should have episode 7 up tomorrow, episode 8, and a few days after that, and episode 9 the following weekend. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Paul Bale.
John Leister.
The Canadian Bro Show.
Living legend in his own
All
mind.
Things Canadian by Pauly and Johnny.
How's it going, eh? Thanks
How
for
you
watching.
doing, eh? You hosers.
Don't forget God loves you, eh?
Take off, eh?
Cheers.
Come back and bring beer.
It's a beautiful day.
It's a beautiful
Don't let it get away.
way.
Manifest your dreams.
Yeah, baby. Let's
for
go.
it. Rocky style.
See you next time. Peace.
Cheers.